In this video I'm going to assemble a model of Tiger tank in 1/72 scale, which cost only $4. Also I will show you full paint process. So let's get started. Hello everyone, in today's video I'm going to assemble this pile of parts into a model of a Tiger 1 tank from World War II period. This kit was ordered by me from China several months ago. Now I can finally assemble it, paint it and show you what I will get. At first glance the parts don't look very good, and in some places there are noticeable large chips, scratches and other flaws. But considering that this model was purchased for $4, with free delivery right to the door of my house, it can be confidently stated that these flaws are not a problem at all. I mean, these problems can be dealt with without spending much time on them. So, if we look at the tracks of this model, which are made as one large piece, it becomes a bit sad. The protective cover of exhaust pipe adds a little more sadness. I get the feeling that some parts of this model were made on a 3D printer, because you can see characteristic edges on some parts. But enough of examining all this, it's time to start assembling. Looking into the instruction, I realized that the whole parts need to be assembled together. There is absolutely nothing extra, only the most important information. Alright, following the instruction we need to connect the two parts of the hull and then proceed to glue the tank track in place. There is nothing difficult about it, except for the large amount of excess plastic that remain on the parts and needed to be completely removed, so they don't spoil the appearance of the model. So far I haven't glued the tracks to the tank hull, because I don't want to rush. The model is quite confusing, I don't see something like this before, and I'm afraid of doing something wrong, because fixing the model will be very difficult. Once the tank running gear was installed in the place, it was time to glue on the track protection. This part isn't actually too bad, you can even see rivets on it, but it still requires some minor processing and modification. At first I thought about replacing this part with a homemade one of aluminum foil, but that would go against the idea of this video. After all, I want to show that even without a lot of money, you can assemble and paint a great replica of Tiger 1 tank from World War II period for just $4. How many times have I mentioned the cost of this model? Let's get back to modifying the tank's body and work into the tank protection. The modification was minor. I split the parts of the protection to add more relief to the finished tank model. Also I had to use a hand drill because the track protection didn't fit properly. After that I armed myself with super glue and installed all the details in place. It turned out well, much better than I expected. But now I need to shift my focus to another important part of this tank. I am talking about turret. This part of model is done well, and its component fit into place with minimum processing. However, a small problem arose. There was a huge gap between the base of the turret and the gun mantlet. This flaw greatly spoiled the appearance of the turret, so I will have to angle the tank gun slightly upward to hide the imperfection and avoid using various addition means, like green stuff. The tank's gun itself is a bit worse than the base, and it needs some work, but overall I can only say good things about this part. At least it's solid and not made up of multiple pieces. For example, on similar model in 1/35 scale, the gun consists of two halves, and without using putty you simply couldn't hide this awful detail from the viewer's eyes. In the case of this model part I had to work a bit with a modeling knife and a hand drill. It's a pity that the electric drill didn't arrive on time, as I have special attachments that would allow me to deal with these problems much faster and more neatly. Well, I think I managed it quite well even with the current tool. During the turret assembly, I began to think that it would be had to depict a tank crewman peeking out of this large hatch. But the problem is that on this model, this hatch is closed with plastic. So my tank crewman will need to amputate half of his body, or I need to remove the excess plastic. There is nothing difficult about cutting figures into parts, but properly processing the model is a more interesting task for me. Choosing the second option, I started working. With the help of a hand drill, I made several holes, so that the plastic wouldn't crack in those places where it shouldn't. Then, using a modeling knife, I managed to do everything neatly and cleanly. Now my tank crewman has a completely free hatch. All that remains is to add some small details to the tank turret, and this part of the model will be ready. But I decided not to rush and dedicated time to those details that look awful in this kit. I'm talking about the tow cables, which almost always look like something strange in every 1/72 scale model. I decided to make this detail from a thin copper wire. By twisting together two such wires and attaching the original plastic parts to them, I got two beautiful tow cables. I decided to skip attaching the small parts and move on to painting. The only thing that probably catches the eyes is the two backpacks attached on the both sides of the turret. Actually, these are parts from a Tiger 1 model in 1/35 scale, but I thought they would look very interesting here. I hope I won't regret my decision. As usual, the model is primed at the beginning to make the all parts into a unified whole and not look strange. Also, priming will hide all the minor imperfections that can occur during assembly, such as small scratches or minor chips. I primed this model with black color from the Vallejo company. This color is from the model color series, so you can see it on your screen right now. Now I left my model to dry, and the next day it was time to paint in the model in the desired color. I really wanted to make this tiger in a camouflage pattern, but then I remembered that I wanted to make a winter diorama with it, which means the multicolored camouflage is out of the question. Therefore, for the base color I used a mix of black and Dectan from the same Vallejo company. As a result, I got a fairly light gray color. But after drying, this acrylic usually darkens, so I will get the desired color. As you can see, I was right. The main color of the model darkened slightly, and now I can start a detailed painting of this tank. This time I started with various damages, like scratches, chips and abrasions. For this I made a mixture of black and Dectan again, but this time I made two variations, lighter and darker. Also I prepared two different tools for their application, a brush and a sponge. All these damages are usually applied in a chaotic order, but it's still worth understanding that there are places where this damage will look unnatural and even strange. Therefore, you need to be more careful and use real photos as examples. Nowadays you can find a huge number of real photos and photos of models made by various diorama masters on the internet. So I think there shouldn't be any problem with finding an example. Another reason for applying chips in such quantity is weathering. After all the damages are in place, I will use oil paints as weathering, so all the extra details will be hidden with oil paint. Well, it's time to put the brush aside and take up the sponge. Remember, when you're working with a sponge, it is very important not to dip it in paint too much, otherwise the result will be, to put it mildly, not very good. But if you do everything carefully and don't rush, you will get amazing result in a short period of time. I was satisfied with the result of chipping process, and now I was geared up for working with oil paint. To be precise, I focused on working with an oil paint based wash. This time the mixture turned out very thick and very dark. As you can notice, I applied it quite messily on many protruding areas of this model. But let me assure you, I didn't make a mistake, and everything is going as planned. This is necessary so that after a short drying time I can apply a solvent. Using a brush and a solvent that only affect oil paint and does not react to acrylic, I managed to smooth out rough and dark spots of oil paint excellently. Not only do protruding parts stand out, but I also create a withering effect. This effect creates some oil stains somewhere on the tank, and dark dirt in other places. And let me tell you, it looks very cool. Also, of course, I didn't manage to do everything without mistakes, but a cut and swap soaked in solvent saved me from embarrassment. Bruh. Just take a look at the result of the work done. Alright, enough gazing, let's move on to rust. This time I didn't feel like making this model very rusty. Yes, I wanted to add some damage, but just a little. After all, I wanted the model to look like a tank that has been on the battlefield but hasn't received too much damage. And when I finished with the rust, it was time to work on the wooden detail, of which there are plenty in this model. To paint this detail, I need to use 3 shades of brown wood color. First, the basic brown color was used. Then, with a darker color, I paint areas that come into contact with the metal parts of this object. And only after that, I applied abrasions in places where they most often appear. As you can see, this detail didn't create any particular difficulties to me, so I don't see the point in dwelling on them any longer. Let's move on to the decals. In this kit they are quite good. Of course, it doesn't look very nice, that they need to be cut out so accurately, but honestly it didn't bother me, and I applied them as they come straight out the box, and in my opinion it doesn't spoil the model, especially considering the fact that I plan to improve the decals with matte varnish later on. But still, some extra parts need to be trimmed with a hobby knife, as these decals have too much excess part. Then I dedicated a little time to my favorite technique in painting dioramas. I am talking about highlighting the edges and protruding parts of the model as a whole with light paint. All sharp angles, model edges, rivets and bolts are painted with light paint. This will give the model diversity, volume and make it more natural and interesting to the viewer. Well, cool, let's move on. But before we proceed to apply dirt and other natural blends to the vehicle, we need to paint the tank rollers in rubber color, which of course black color from Model Color series. Oh yes, I almost forgot to work on the tank gun, so I had to do that before I started applying the dirt effect. The same effect was applied to the gun as before. Black acrylic paint was smoothed out to create the necessary gradient and give the gun a pleasant appearance. I wanted to achieve the same pleasant appearance with those parts of the model that were very often used and subjected to certain damage. I am talking about the towing cables. By using ochre colored oil paint, I managed to achieve a very realistic rust effect. Of course, this part required another small adjustment, but we will get to that towards the end. But for now, finally we can focus on the dirt. Using matte acrylic lacquer, I added several prepared pieces of grass to the tank hull. Then I mixed several colors of dry pigment, which I made myself from drawn chalk. After mixing the acrylic lacquer, material to simulate grass, and dry pigment, I got a very liquid mixture reassembling mud. Now I need to spend quite a bit of time trying to realistically place the mixture on the tank's tracks. Unfortunately, the tracks in this kit have very poor quality, so I had to spend a lot of time making this problem less noticeable. I had to make an effort and add pieces of grass stuck in various places to the tank's suspensions. This process is quite challenging, but with patience the result will be truly pleasing and very realistic. Also, I had to sprinkle the rear parts of the tank with small splashes of mud. On one hand, they look terrible, but on the other hand, it's much better than leaving these parts untouched. No matter how hard I tried, Unfortunately, I still don't understand how to paint tank exhaust. I keep getting some mess, so be patient, I think I will be able to handle it in the future. But for now, let's move on the final touch before the finish. This time I will add silver paint to the tank's tracks, to show the places of constant friction on them. Also, a little silver paint will be able to the tank hull. I saw this trick in one of the YouTube videos, and I really like it. And just look at how cool this paint look on this tank. Honestly, I think this is one of my best works, if not the best so far. I hope you didn't waste your time watching this video and learn something new, or simply enjoyed the viewing. If so, please give this video a thumb up, write what you like and didn't like about this work. And for those who want to support the development of this channel and help me with purchasing figures and models, there is a link to my Patreon in description of this video. With that, I bid you farewell. Please stay safe, always stay in good mood, and don't be lazy. Goodbye, my friends.